Hello, Ken Speaks here with part 4 of my Moebius 2001 Space Station V build. Very nearing completion of this build. There will be one more video after this one, finishing up the station and doing a final finale. On this particular video build, I'm working on the additional parts of the station, a little bit of scratch building on it. I'm also working on the base, begun working on that and hashing that out on how it's going to work. And stay tuned to the end of this video. I'm going to have a special guest, Oggie Gonzalez from Interstellar Modeler, going over a little collaboration that we did in order to make my base pretty amazing. So stay tuned at the end of that, and I'll be revealing that towards the end of it. All right, let's go ahead and take a look. All right, so I'm working on the engineering of my base that the station is going to be attached to. And I had a couple of iterations at first, some tests with some thin plywood, and then another more accurate test with the thicker wood that I'm using here. So what I'm ultimately going with is, this is a wood plank. I think it's just pine. It's supposed to be a 1" by 12" and then I got a 4-foot length, which I cut down. In reality, which is very strange to me, wood sizes are not what they indicate. A 2x4 is not 2x4. It's actually smaller. Same thing with this. This is actually maybe 3/4 inch by 11¼ inches. But for my purposes, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. But I wanted some good thick wood that's going to work. And it turns out that the whole, well, let me back up a second and I'll go back and talk about this. So I want the station to be slightly angled, but not too much. And it has to work so that wherever I position it on the board, it's going to clear the rest of the base. So this piece here is 20 inches long, and like I said, it's a little less than a foot wide. That's not going to be the ultimate width. So this is going to be attached onto this board down here. And it's going to look something like this. And this board here, I believe it's 18 inches long by 15 inches wide. It's a little bit thinner, nice piece of wood I got from Hobby Lobby. This other wood I just got from a local big box hardware store called Menards, in order to get the wood. And these side supports that I angled are also the same piece as this, so that they're going to have some structural strength. And then what's going to happen is I'm going to have this as my backdrop. It'll have some space background, of course. This is actually 16 inches wide by 20 inches long. Now, I didn't really want to try to get wood that's exactly 20 inches. It was kind of hard to do anyway, so I'm just kind of making do with what I have. And so this will be positioned in front of it when it's standing up. Let me go ahead and stand that up and I'll show you. All right, here you go. So these little slats on the side are 2 inches wide. So there's a 2-inch gap between what will be the backdrop to the station that you're going to see from the front, and then the back piece of wood where the motor is going to be housed. There will of course be a hole through the middle of this to support for the steel tube to go through, and I'll come up with some mechanism to connect this on. I'm also going to take some more slats that are 2 inches wide up at the top, but I'm going to leave the center open as a gap because I'm going to need to get in there and disconnect the station and reconnect it. So this would be a whole lot easier if I didn't want to disconnect the station for transport, but I do. I mean, I'm really not going to take it off when it's here and displayed in my home, but when I take it to conventions, which at least 2 of them, one here in Indianapolis and one to Wonderfest, I don't want to try to transport it with the station sitting there and bouncing around during the trip and something being damaged. So I want the station to be removable, and so that gives me 2 inches to be able to get in there. I'm going to obviously insert the station, the steel tube, in from the front, and then I just need some room to be able to get in there with an Allen wrench or a screwdriver with an Allen tip on it so I can tighten it down. That's all we need to do, and connect up the power wires. So that's the basic idea. And then from the front, you're just going to see, sorry, I'm trying to angle this. You're just going to see a space backdrop behind the station, and I can even build up the sides of this a little bit to match it up so that you're not seeing an overlap. That's not a problem. But I wanted a nice piece of wood on the bottom there. That'll ultimately just be painted black. I'm not really going to have anything on it as far as any type of a space backdrop for that part of it, just behind it, so you're looking kind of straight on with it. So okay, so let me show you what I started with my first attempt. Right, I'm trying to do this with one hand, so you can see the first attempt was a considerably steeper angle. I was originally going for 70 degrees, but I think this one, the first one, ended up being closer to 60 degrees. It's kind of tricky to get all the angles just right. The ultimate one that I have here is about 75 degrees, with 90 degrees being straight up and down, of course. And so this was just too sharp of an angle, and when I put in the ship, or put in the rod, it was just too steep. So let me put this one in and show you what I mean. All right, so the first one, I used a saw bit for a drill and drilled out a hole that's 2 inches diameter, which is the size of the motor. So I'm going to be mounting the motor from the inside. I'm just holding it there, and there are two tabs to screw it in place, and it is the right thickness for this board, which works out perfectly. But you can see when I put this down, it's angled down very sharply, so it's coming way down. And remember, that's going to be in the center of the station. It won't be necessarily that long, but I cannot have the station that low. It's just going to be real close to the bottom of the base. It would have fit, but it would have just been real close. And I can even rotate the motor so that the turning part is at the top, but it just was going to be too much of an angle, and it would have been harder to look at it and see what you wanted to see. So that's why I decided to redo it. I tore this apart, but the wood glue and the screws I was using just really held it in place, so it actually broke a lot of the wood off. So let me switch back to the other one. All right, yeah, you can see how when I broke this off, a lot of the paneling on this piece of wood, the original one, this is a new one, just broke off. That glue's really strong stuff, which is good because I want it to be strong. But I ended up damaging, and in any case, I wouldn't have been able to really work with this and cut it down any sharper that I wanted, or put wood back on it. That's the trouble with, you cut things away, it's going to be ruined. I was hoping to use the original board and then just use this for some measurements, but I ended up just getting a new one. It wasn't too bad. This nice piece of wood from Hobby Lobby was about $8, maybe $9. These 1 by 12 by 4 foot, only about $8 from Menards, which one I ended up buying 2, of course. One of these was plenty of wood to be able to do what I needed. So not a massive expense. And there's that hole that I talked about that I cut out with a saw bit for my drill. So I have it all hashed out now with the new version, and I don't have this glued together yet. I just have them positioned in place with one screw holding them on in the back, just to kind of get an idea of how they're going to be, how it's going to look. And that's the hard part. I did use a little cheap one, but I used this little tool in order to measure the 75 degrees, or the 70 originally. So it is a bit tricky. You have to hold it up against the piece and then do some measurements and then try to cut it so it looks the proper angle. Of course, I'm cutting an angle on this. I'm cutting an angle on the edge of the bottom of here, which I had to do as well, so that it'll fit snugly. That angle is not quite perfect, but it's going to be fine. Once it's all glued down and screws are holding it in place, it's going to be super sturdy. Just like the first one was, it was really sturdy. It was hard to remove it again. And then I have to center it in the middle of this board, since I really couldn't find a nice piece of wood like this that was going to be at least 15 inches wide. And again, I don't have to have it that way. I just have to have this as a sturdy support. So when I put the motor on it, it's going to be held in there very solidly. Give me a nice support and enough room for the station to extend out from this. So, okay. So I think I've got that dialed in at this point. Let me go ahead and get these slats glued on, make some other ones for the top. I might have to adjust and cut a little bit off this top. I made it a little bit longer than 20 inches because when you angle it down a bit, it was going to be too short. So I added an extra inch on, but I think it needs to be cut down just a little bit, so I can do that before I attach it. What I'm going to do, like I did on the first one, is I will glue these onto here. And I already drilled a few pilot holes, and then I'll put 3 or 4 screws back here to hold this on nice and tightly. Let that set up for a little bit, and then I'll make sure I have the hole in the right place, get that cut out, and then I will then do the same thing with this, put a few pilot holes into the bottom here and along here, and glue it down. And that's very, very sturdy. And then once I get that all together, and I'll probably do a similar thing like this, like I'll have a piece of wood angling up over here, coming up to here. Make sure that those look right as well. All right, so let me get working on that. But this is coming together nicely for me. All right, so here's the other parts that I added onto my base, to the back of it. So I added these sections on that are similar to the bottom. There's a space in between that I can get in here and get to the little collet and loosen up these Allen nuts to remove the steel tube that'll be attached to the station. And I don't have to just do it through here. The backdrop that I'm going to show later on in the video is not going to be permanently attached. It's going to be removable, and then I'll be able to put in the station, get the backdrop attached, and then and have the station connected correctly. This will be painted black on the bottom as well to go along with the base. But right now this is pretty much completed. I don't have it permanently glued down yet. I just have it screwed in place, but I can still put some glue on when I'm ready to glue it in place. I have to make sure it's centered, and then some screws again to put it in there. But it's all going to be nice and solid and hold the station up nicely. So, all right. All right, so I'm working on the center hub, the center tube. So what I had to do first of all is cut off the supports. There were a lot of supports. Each one of these pieces had 2 keyed connectors that connected in. but I want to run the steel tube through the center. And so what I did was I cut those out, and then I just glued the two halves together for now, and then they'll go together to make the final tube. Before I did that, I measured out a circle out of cardboard and then paper, and then I determined the center, and then I cut two pieces of styrene that I glued together and drilled a hole through so that the steel tube now fits through that. I might make two of them. What this will do then is this will fit into this little groove right in the middle. And it'll be glued into place. And then when I put these together, there's a center point where this tube can go through. And there'll be corresponding parts. So pretty much the tube is going to come through from the back through this middle part. This is the center of the hub between the front wheel and the front and back landing bays, and obviously the two wheels. So it'll come through the back, come out of here, and be nice and solid. I'm going to make sure that it's very well glued in with 5-minute epoxy, so it's very solid into the actual space station. And then I'm only going to have as much as I need coming out of the back of the station to go in to attach onto the motor and the slip ring. And then everything will be attached onto this, including the station. I may have to cut some of this tube off. I forget how long that is, but I'll have to see how long it is as far as the station is concerned. So, okay. All right. So let me get that hashed out. And like I said, I might make another one. The idea is that I want this tube to be centered throughout the station. If it is not, it might tend to be obvious when it's rotating that it's not quite centered. So, all right, let me keep working on that. All right, so I created two more styrene sheet sections. Lined them all with the holes. So I'm going to have three all together going through the center. They're just kind of sat on there right now. And then of course this will go on top. So this whole main central hub is going to be the solid point for the steel tube to go through. And then what I'll end up doing is I will put, take that off. When I'm ready to glue it into place and I cut off the length that I need it to be, then I'm gonna glue these in place, stick the rod through. I want to scuff up the metal a bit to get a nice grip. It's going to probably come to like right to the edge of it. But then I'm going to fill this entire thing, I believe, with probably epoxy sculpt, because that is going to dry rock hard and it's going to attach itself to the inside of this, give me a nice solid bond onto the steel tube. Because really that's what's rotating the station. It's going to be rotating from the central hub, so it's getting a nice solid connection. There'll be a little bit onto the part coming in from the rear docking bay, but the main connection is going to be this right here. All right, so I did one more modification on the inside of the back docking bay where the steel tube is going to go through. You can see a little piece of wood back in there. It's a square wood dowel that I had, and I cut a little section off, drilled a hole through it, sanded it to fit in just inside the back of that bay. I'm going to throw some red paint on it here once it sets up, and I 5-minute epoxied it into place. You can see it back going through there. It's not going to be the main support of the station, because as I said before, I'm going to support it mainly in the main central hub, where I have those little plastic discs. I cut that out. And I'm probably going to put some epoxy sculpt in there, pack it in there really solid so it hardens as hard as a rock. Gives it some nice support. But I wanted to have a little more of some teeth on this end of it. I actually got the idea from another YouTube channel called Small Scale Futures. Check him out. He's building this station as well, doing a great job. I love how everybody comes up with their own engineering ideas for how to make the station rotate, how to attach it onto whatever kind of rod they're going to use. I'll post a link to his latest video in my description if you want to check him out. He's doing a great job. But he originally had that idea where he augmented this. I believe he had a piece of thin plastic styrene in front of that as well, along that curve, but I mainly just wanted that piece of wood there to give it some more strength. And ultimately, when I get ready to put the tube in all together, it's going to be glued in here and then glued into the rest of it. So it has a nice solid place to go in, and it's nice and centered. All right, so I'll let that set up, and I'm going to continue working on the base. Well, I'm continuing to working on the rest of the station to get ready to go ahead and get the tube glued into place, get it cut to the right length that I need it to be. So, all right, so I did just a little bit of scratch building and additional little parts onto the construction ring. When I looked at the video from the film, I noticed a couple of things. That first of all, the kit part of these are too uniform. They're too squared off. In the film, there's actually little panels that are gray that are sticking out, so they're very uneven, to indicate that they started building up the various panels, but they were in a stage of unfinished. So I just used some styrene sheet and some stripping, glued it onto the ends on there in a random pattern. Did that on each of these on both sides. So in the end, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have, and I'm not sure if they really are in the film or not, but like these panels here, I'm going to make gray. All of this is going to be gray, and it's going to be sticking out a bit. And one other thing I did is on this part here, there were actually a lot more detail of some of the levels that were starting to be built up. So I used some styrene sheet and stripping again, and just kind of build up a little random pattern of those, just to add a little more detail. These are going to be red because they're going to match up with the other red construction beam part. And I did figure out that this top panel right here is gray, and then these two strips coming down I think are supposed to be gray as well. All right, so, and then of course I did these on the other side as well, as you can see. All right, I started to kind of fit, this isn't glued on, but I started to fit these very thin, delicate parts onto here, because once I get these painted red, I'm going to go ahead and begin to mask off the red parts, and then paint everything else with the black, and then I'll be doing the gray with the whole station. So these have to be the same way. So I have to put these onto here and onto the completed side of the station as well. These are a little fiddly and tricky. I'm going to have to fuss with them a bit. There are some, you can see right there's some little square bits that fit into these little teeny notches, but they don't fit right. So I'd either have to clean up these, which would be delicate, or just take a needle file and clean out those little notches so they fit in there better. So that's going to be some more work on those. You get those put on before I do anything more. I did think briefly about maybe using some brass rod instead of these, but I don't really need to. Those are nice and thin. I don't think I would get a brass rod that's that much thinner, so I think I'll stick with just the kit part. But definitely coming along on this. So let me go ahead and get some paint on these, and then I'll finish up putting those on, and I'll be ready to start doing some the black Krylon flat black over top after I mask them, and then we'll start working towards getting the gray onto the whole station. All right, so I'm putting on these really, really fiddly and fragile parts right here. So there's two different pieces, and they're reversed. And what I've kind of figured out is, well, besides looking at the instructions, which are still complicated, this one end has this little overhang piece, and you want that to be on the inside. So obviously you wouldn't want that sticking out on the outside. You want it on the inside. So when it's on there, see if I can find it. No, it's because there's not one there. Dummy. Where are we? Okay, well, you can't really see it. But it is on the inside. If it was on the outside, it would be obvious, and you don't want to see that. All right, so what I had to do is, these are a really tight fit, because these have a little teeny tabs on each of these parts. They're supposed to go down into these little notches, but they were not going in very easily at all, and trying to force them in, they tended to warp the part, which is very thin and fragile. So I took my mini rotary tool, which is very helpful, and I found this piece here that's slightly bigger than the opening. And so what I did, sorry, I was looking for the brand, but I'm not sure what it is. Slightly bigger than the opening, so I went around and I'm not going to do it on camera, but I turn it on and then I just make that a little thicker, so the part goes in a lot easier. It just slides in a lot easier, because it also has to go into the little hole at the top of here and a little hole down there at the bottom. And again, there's some tension on it, so it tends to want to bow out when you're doing it. So what I end up doing is putting it in place. I'll glue in, say, for example, these two here with my plastric bondine, hold them in place. Once they set up, then I go ahead and glue in the part that attaches right here. And then I come to this end and I do the same over here with these two, and the part that goes in here, and then I just get the two in the middle and just press them against it until they're nice and straight, nice and solid. And you can see they line up nicely. Definitely some nice fine detail. They look really good, but they are very delicate. One of them, so where's it at? Right here. This one here doesn't have parts that go all the way up because there's nothing to connect them to. There is no bottom of the ring. So they have special parts that just go over here. And there's 4 of them. So there's 2 on this side and there's 2 on this side, and the same with over these. One of these had one of the little end pieces, you can still kind of see it right there, kind of broke. Yeah, I'm going to have to play with that some more. Right there. And get that glued back together. There were not any extra ones of these ones that I can tell. I don't know yet if these ones have extras, but I'm not sure, because there's a lot of them. So there's 4 per spire or spoke. So you have 12 just right here, and then 16 altogether. And you have these 2 extra ones. So, okay. So let me go ahead and get these finished glued on, and then I'll be ready to start masking off the construction parts. And then I'll be able to start doing the black and then the gray on the rest of it. All right, so as I promised earlier on in the video, I have a guest with me on this part of the build with Oggie Gonzalez from Interstellar Modeler. We did a collaboration for my base. So I recorded a Skype interview. Oggie lives in California, I live in Indiana, and went over the unboxing of the collaboration that he did for me. It's a little bit choppy in places, so just bear with me on that, but I think you'll get the gist of it and be able to see it. But let's go ahead and take a look at the little Skype call with Oggie Gonzalez. On a Skype call with a special guest today. Probably hard to see me, sorry.
That's okay.
Let me take that up a second.
Okay.
There we go. So we have Oggie Gonzalez from Interstellar Modeler, good friend of mine.
Yeah, I can.
We've collected on some previous builds. If you saw my build for the Ares 1B, he had painted the backdrop for me with part of the partial moon and space and the Earth, which is awesome. It's really amazing as a backdrop. So when I was thinking about making this build here, I wanted to go with the idea of the iconic poster from the 60s that we always think about when we see it. It's painted, so it's obviously not a real shot from the film, but it has the Earth, a little bit of the Earth. It has a space background, a little bit of the moon, and then you have the iconic space clipper blasting out of the station with an exhaust coming behind.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I always loved that poster. It stuck with me back in the 60s and the 70s.
Yeah, beautiful painting. It's one of those that you look at that, it brings to mind a lot of great memories when you were growing up seeing this sort of stuff that inspired you in a lot of ways. And Robert McCall, who painted the painting, is just it's really beautifully done and so retro and brings to mind a lot of things from that era where everything was so futuristic looking and people were thinking this is where we would be in 2001. Right. Yeah. But it's a beautiful painting. Great choice. I thought, I think you and I had somewhat of a similar idea when you were talking about the station. I was thinking to myself, well, it'd be kind of cool if you had that painting. And sure enough, you ended up with the same idea. So it was a pleasure to work on it. It's always really cool when you, I don't know, there's just a certain special something when you're painting something that you've seen for a long time, and you have just kind of a special connection there as you're it certainly makes you appreciate the art piece in a lot of different ways. So
what we're talking about, because I had mentioned it, so Oggie did a painting for me. When we were talking about it, a few weeks ago, we were talking about what I was planning on doing, and I had already thought of the idea, and I was going to introduce it to him and ask him about doing a painting for me. And he loved the idea as well. And like he said, he was already thinking about it as well. So what he did was he made a painting of the poster, but without the station, of course, in it. So it'll be behind the station while it's rotating and have the amazing looking image from the poster, which I always thought was interesting. I loved it, but I always thought it was interesting because the space station is not the prime. It's not like the film is about this space station.
Right.
One, maybe 8-minute scene or something like that. But it's one of those things that's so memorable, and
the
classical music playing behind it.
Yeah.
That you can't even watch that scene without that music playing through your head.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And when I remember first watching it as a kid, thinking, what an interesting choice for music, because you always think they write their own soundtrack, and here you're listening to the Blue Danube, which is a very famous song. At the time I was taking piano lessons, so we were all learning how to play it, but I just thought it was such an interesting choice, and now you can't imagine the scene without that type of
Yeah,
without that
exactly.
music. And yeah.
Or the other ones. I mean, there's other
Yeah.
scores when you see the Moonbus going over the lunar surface,
Yeah.
and when you
Yeah.
see the Space Clipper. Well, the Space Clipper is introduced at the same time, of course, when we see the space station.
Yes.
So definitely fascinating. I don't think a lot of people knew how to kind of peg this film when it came out.
Yeah.
It's often introduced as I always remember the TV Guide description. It was vivid tableau of space exploration in the 21st century.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
no, it really isn't. But I mean,
Right.
it's not just about space travel. Like they really couldn't grasp what the film was trying to say. They just saw the spaceships in the space station and discovered.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I'm correct now, I think a lot of it, there was a resurgence, certainly after Star Wars came out, everyone wanted to show something space related. And so, of course, things like this came back to surface again as they started to rebroadcast some of these things. And I had heard about the film, read about in Starlog, right? Because they always had things like this in Starlog, had never really seen the film. And I really didn't know it was completely different than what I expected it to be. Because,
yeah.
Especially when you see something like Star Wars is more sci fantasy. My son likes to say it's not so much science fiction, but you're used to this sort of fast-paced sort of action, and it just kind of blew me away. It's a completely different type of film. But the special effects, oh my gosh, they are groundbreaking, and they still hold up well today.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I'm the same way. I didn't see the film. I was too young when it was in the theaters because I was only 7 years old. But I had gotten for Christmas, probably my first sci-fi model was the spin drift from Land of the Giants. That's what got me involved.
Yeah,
in
so
it.
that was mine too. Yeah.
And for Christmas, like it was in the early 70s, my mother got me the Moonbus.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up getting the Space Clipper as well.
Yeah.
And I just absolutely loved them because of the little astronauts in it, little figures, the interior. And I was just enthralled by it. And so I saw the images of it. That's what I saw was the spacecrafts and the space and those kind of things. And you're right. When I first saw it, I didn't know quite what to make of it. Because what I always saw were the spaceships, but those were just very small scenes. And then the rest of it was for the film. So
absolutely. Yeah. And you certainly gain a different appreciation the older that you get and you rewatch it, that sort of thing. You really kind of get what they're trying to say. But still, regardless, just blown away at the special effects that they were able to do at that time, because it was just groundbreaking. They did. Yeah,
phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. So, all right. So Oggie finished the painting last week and he mailed it to me. It just came today. I haven't opened it yet.
Yeah.
I'll do an unboxing now, so I'll see it for the first. I've seen it. I've seen pictures of it that he sent me. It's amazing. I mean, he knocked it out of the. Looks fantastic. All the details and when you look at it, you start to appreciate what really was in that poster. There's all the little swirly space things going on.
Yeah.
And the Earth and the moon, little moon.
Yeah, and all the detail he even put into the Earth that way. I mean, you don't really. You start blowing up the picture or the poster, and you start realizing there's a lot of detail on that. But it was definitely fun to work on.
He did a fantastic job on painting the station.
Yes.
And the little clipper blasting out of it.
Yeah, he did.
So.
All right, well, I'm excited for you to open it. I've been waiting all week for it to get to you, so here we go.
So let me go ahead. I'm gonna show an image of the poster.
Okay.
And then I'll go ahead and I'll open the box up. I won't waste your time opening it, and then I'll show you the actual picture.
Yeah, I have nothing else planned this evening, so I'm good.
All right, so that was a picture of the poster, as you could see. I really like the flares and the colors that the artist originally put into it.
Yes.
The swirl and the Earth and so when I talked to Oggie, I didn't want something realistic like space. I want the poster, something that looks like a painting, something that's designed to be an artist's interpretation of what it looks like. So here is the painting. And so we have on the back, you can see that there, Earth and Moon, Oggie, acrylic, is it 820?
Yeah, 8 August 2024. Yeah.
24, and is your signature. Go ahead and show you the final painting.
All right, there you go.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
Really,
Yeah.
really.
I'm glad you love it. I was anticipating all week for you to get this, so
Oh, me too.
I think that's going to make a really good. Once it's all pieced together, it's just going to look great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Swirls in the space.
Mm-hmm.
With it, the moon, lots of little stars. It might be hard to see it on the camera, but there's a lot of little stars in the background, giving us some realism.
Yeah.
Down here at the bottom, the Earth, which is really cool. It has a lot of detail as well in it.
Yeah, if you look close enough, you'll see some blue stars and some red ones and some green ones mixed into those little tiny dots. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Oh, yeah, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
Did you like speckle it with a brush?
Yeah, there's a technique that you use. It's a short brush, and you thin the paint down a little bit. Took a little practice because you want the splatters to group together like they would stars, and not look like you're just splattering all over. Yeah, but it took a little time, and I think the pattern came out pretty well, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have the back of the station here, the construction part. So it's going to be basically positioned like this and rotate. And the whole thing is going to be tilted slightly forward.
Uh-huh.
Let me bring over the base here real quick.
Okay.
We'll there and kind of get an idea of what that's going to look like. And it's going to overhang the sides a little bit, which I knew it was. I have some other little stripping that I can put on the sides that even out the bottom of it. This is how it's going to sit, sitting at about a 75-degree angle. So it's leaning forward. And then the station is going to be pretty much centered right about here.
Wow.
Probably about close. And it's going to be spinning, of course.
Yeah.
And then see, there's two of them, so it's going to be like about this far out.
Sure. Yeah.
A little space is going to be coming out the front.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Rotates. So it's going to look quite amazing.
Yeah, that's going to look, I can't wait to see it done. That's going to look great.
So thanks again to Oggie. Thank you, Oggie, for doing the painting for me. I really love it.
You're very welcome.
Well done yourself. Love my first one you did, but this one has even outdone that one.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate the compliment, and it's a pleasure to have done that for you. I think it's going to turn out great. I can't wait to see it in person. I
will treasure it, and so, all right. Well, thanks again, Oggie, for coming on.
My pleasure, my honor to do that for you. Yeah.
And I look forward to getting this finished up in the next few weeks and then posting the final video for it. So
sounds great. I look forward to it. Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
You bet.
All right, so really happy with the painting that Oggie did. Here's a little better image of it. You can see all the really detailed stars and little swirls in the moon. As he said, there's like a blue star and there's some other little colors throughout it. And the Earth, the various detail that's in the Earth as well, which is pretty cool. There's Oggie's signature. Really happy with this. He did a fantastic job. And then here's the base. Let me turn this around and I'll show you how this is going to look on the base. All right, so here it is, slightly angled on the base. And then once I complete everything else and I paint the bottom black and I put a little frame around it, attach it onto the base. It won't be permanently attached, but it'll be secured. You're really only going to see the painting with the station in front of it, and the station will be rotating. So really, really happy with that. It's going to be fantastic. So, all right. So definitely coming along. A little bit more to do on the base, and then finish the painting on the station, and I'll be ready to start putting this together. All right, so that's going to wrap up this part of this build. And as I said earlier, very close to finishing up this build. Just a few more things on the station itself. I have to finish securing in the steel rod and get the station put together, but I also have to do some more painting first, doing the black painting on the construction side, and then going back and finishing up with the gray, the light gray on the whole station. So I'll definitely finish this up in the next build and get it complete, and then do a final reveal of the Space Station V from 2001: A Space Odyssey from Moebius. All right, well, thank you to all my new subscribers, and I will see you in the next video.